Hey, welcome to day 2 on going through webinar scripts that can get you an automated flow of new clients using Facebook ads plus this webinar script. Yesterday, I talked about putting together that big promise. So we're walking you through day by day. What are the most integral parts of a webinar script to really capture your audience's attention, move them from a cold audience to a raving fan and ultimately a client at the end of the day. If this is the first time joining one of my lives, I'm Brian Czekanski. I help coaches crack the code on Facebook ads so that they can accelerate their growth and impact while cutting their work hours in half. So one of the things that I see all the time is that, especially when coaches are building their business, they feel like they have to do all the things and they're kind of getting burned out because they're spending so much time on new business that they don't have as much time to really get their existing clients results, or they feel like their business is running them more than anything else. So by using Facebook ads combined with a high converting webinar, we can get them to the point where, again, they can kind of cut their work hours in half by taking away the burden of always trying to find new clients. The clients are coming to them via applications and sales calls that fit the right mold, and they're doing a lot of pre-selling via those Facebook ads and webinars. So in terms of the Facebook ads, check out my opt-in right there, fullconfidenceads.com, where I really break down not only how to write compelling Facebook ad copy that will kind of draw in your specific audience and get them to your webinar or whatever that next step in your strategy is, but I also show you step-by-step how to create and manage those Facebook ads, how to analyze the data, and then as you're running the Facebook ads over time, how to optimize that performance to get even better results. So fullconfidenceads.com. So yesterday I talked all about the big promise. It's something that, in your webinar, you got to have in the first few minutes, but certainly if you can do it in the first 30 to 60 seconds. After that, if you're not really catching your audience's attention, their curiosity, there's going to be a drop off. So you're going to lose a lot of people. So we're going to really hold their attention with a big promise that's specific, that has a lot of curiosity, that speaks to the outcome that they want the most. And then we're going to go into kind of what I feel is kind of the second, most important thing as part of a webinar. It's kind of the second thing that I work on with clients, which is really figuring out, okay, how do we kind of bring that bold promise, and how do we start to build belief in our clients? They have these problems that they have out there right now. We're going to get them to that outcome. How do we give them the stepping stone? How do we give them the visibility in terms of how they can get there? So again, marketing is all about a belief, set of beliefs that your prospect has. And we want to get them to kind of their old way of thinking and get them to a new way of thinking so that they start to, again, build up enough confidence that they know that the outcome that you promised is absolutely possible for them. Everybody thinks that they're a special snowflake and that in their unique situation that they can achieve the outcome that you have out there. Systematically along the way in our webinar, this is kind of the teaching part of the webinar. And it might only be 15 or 20 minutes as we go through the various different sections, but this is where I spend a lot of time with clients really building out how do we actually do this? Because again, if you just have a bold promise that's out there and you're kind of meeting your clients where they are with their specific problems, there's still going to be those objections. There's still going to be those questions, and you're going to get to the end of your webinar and you're not going to get the type of conversions that you're looking for. So I want to kind of knock down those objections, knock down those questions, and kind of build up the belief of your audience by really systematically thinking about how do we build up, how do we give them visibility in terms of how that outcome is possible that we started out in the very beginning. So what I'm going to do is just kind of showcase my drawing skills in this really quickly. I think you'll all appreciate it. I'm just going to kind of lay it out step by step in terms of what we're trying to do. So this is kind of I've just got a blank web page right here. So again, in the first 30 to 60 seconds or in the first few minutes, we want to put out a bold promise that's very specific, raises enough curiosity. And this is going to be the thing that's kind of imprinted on their mind as we go along. We want to make sure that, it's something that they just have to figure, there's enough curiosity along the way in your webinar that they just have to figure out that outcome is exactly what I want, but how is it all possible for me to do it? And it being differentiated enough from all your competition that it makes sense. And I really kind of split it up. There's various different ways to do this, but the easiest way to do it, we've seen it with other webinar scripts as well, is kind of break down your process into 3 or 4 steps. Again, if you're a coach, you're going out there, you're working with clients, you have this outcome that you put out there, this bold promise. How do we actually get people from where they are right now to that bold outcome? And it really comes down to like really thinking systematically about how do you work with your audience? Like when you bring on a new client, what's that first set of objectives, or what's that first thing that you do with them to start them getting in the right direction? We know we're not going to get to that bold outcome right away in the next few weeks or even months. So you might have a 6-month program or something like that, or a group program. What are those first few things that you really put a priority on, and how can we kind of identify that as kind of step one? Like step one in our process, here's what we're going to focus on to start getting you results along the way. And then we start thinking about steps one, steps two, steps three. So if I just kind of lay it out here, here's kind of step one in terms of the process. And we're just going to really talk it through for our audience in terms of the various different steps. We're going to go through it very systematically. Again, you've seen in other webinar scripts where they talk about secrets and what's kind of missing in terms of where they are right now. But kind of secret, like secret number one, or kind of belief, like I kind of think about it as like your end prospects have 3 belief systems that are kind of holding them back from that outcome that they want the most. So we want to really systematically break them down in terms of what we're trying to do. So step one is just going to be right here. Again, that's kind of like the bold promise that you put out there. And then, we want to systematically walk them through. Step one, this is the first activity that we're going to do in terms of what, is getting your results. Again, it might be a method that you put out there. If you're a personal development coach, it might be that first step that you help them to start getting some, belief systems. And again, it all goes back to like, what are they doing right now? Like, what is holding them back from getting results? Like, in terms of what they're doing, and how can we kind of shift their beliefs in the overall scheme of things. So like step one, in terms of your overall process, like what is that first thing that's going to get them a lot of momentum? And again, a lot of times I'll ask coaches to kind of give away that step one, maybe in terms of an opt-in or a video training series, because that really helps people kind of build up that trust. So to give you an example, for a personal development coach, it might be something as simple as starting meditation. It might be something as easy as doing hypnosis or EFT. All those kind of things start in the progress of trying to see results. We know for each of those activities that might not get them all the way to that unique outcome, but kind of changing around their habits in some way can make a big difference. So think about in step one, like what is that first activity that you can give your clients a quick win, get them momentum working along the way, and how can you get them activity? So again, and really think about like, okay, what is their belief system right now? What is that false belief that they have that might be holding them back? Again, go back to that personal development. It might be that they're just being a lot more reactionary in their life rather than being intentional with specific habits. So we might take a look in step one, thinking about like, let's take a look at all your daily habits and kind of examine like, okay, like you are not happy with your life right now, but as we kind of lay out out your daily habits, you can see how the certain things that you're doing hour by hour are leading to that end result that you don't want. So if we kind of systematically take some accountability and kind of, institute some new habits, that can get us closer to the outcome that we're looking for. So that might be step one in your process in terms of going through that. But want to really, lay out for our audience, like, okay, what are the old way of doing things and what's the new way of doing things, and kind of really help them realize. And, for a lot of your audience, they might not even realize the certain actions that they're doing unconsciously are leading to the outcome or holding them back from the outcome that they want the most. So number one is really, giving them some visibility in terms of like, here's what you've been doing in the past. Here's the type of results that you've been, the lack of results that you've been giving. You can see the direct correlation to that. If we kind of shift it to, step one of your process and a different way of thinking, here's the results that we've been able to see for our clients. And this is a great way for each of the steps, kind of bringing through stories of success stories that you've had. It can be something that kind of comes from your own life as well. But really think about that, your unique formula. And the other thing we're going to do is kind of give our unique formula a name. So again, by doing that, by attaching some intellectual property to your overall process, that's going to build up the value in your prospect's mind. It's another great way to add some curiosity as well. So like in your process, how can we put something of value there? Again, the other great part is as you get success, people are going to start referencing that proven process in their testimonials. And it's great. It kind of further solidifies the correlation between your proven process and the results that people are getting along the way. So again, start off with like, in step one, kind of describing, and again, each of these steps, give them a unique name. For each step along the way, want to give everything a unique process, unique intellectual property, again, to build up that value, to make your solution differentiated from anything else that they've heard before. Again, think about a situation where step one, I'm a personal development coach, and I talk about how I use hypnosis for that. How can we come up with a different name for hypnosis that has the same level of benefits, but doesn't allow our prospect to say, I've tried hypnosis before, it didn't work for me. So really think about those potential objections and how you can really differentiate your steps, but also your unique formula to really build up the value and to ensure that, regardless of what your prospects have tried before, they can't say, yeah, I've tried that before, it didn't work for me. We want to make sure that each of our names is differentiated, but also the key benefits that we're bringing out here. So really start with the old way of thinking, or the old set of beliefs, old beliefs. Give them visibility on why that's where they are, like how has that led to the outcomes that they have right now, and then start to build those new set of beliefs, and that's going to help them build towards this bold promise up here. So we're going to talk through the new set of beliefs and the set of results that you've seen clients experience in those first few weeks or first few months in working with you. What are those results, and how can people see like the buildup of results along the way? So in step two, as we walk through the old set of beliefs that they have and walk through the outcomes and see even greater results. So in step one, maybe somebody saw their revenue increase by 10% in that first month. And step two, as we go through our process and institute even more things and get even more advanced, okay, in month two, that's where we saw an uplift of 30%, and along the way get to that outcome in terms of that bold promise of what's exactly possible. So again, in each step of the process here, I've seen as many as 5 steps. The reason I always ask my clients to kind of consolidate this along the way is really think about what's memorable for your clients. If you give them 5 possible steps, it's going to be really hard for them to share with one of their colleagues or anything like that, like what they took away from the webinar. But if it's super simple, keep it to 3 steps. It's a lot more, it's more likely that they're actually going to remember those 3 steps, be able to share it with the rest of their community. And you're keeping it very simple. So once you get past kind of the power of 3, it's going to be very difficult to do that. And again, each of these things is going to build on each other. So step 2 is not possible until you've completed step 1. And this can be a really quick step. This can be just a really step change in terms of their beliefs. Again, and as we get to step 2 and as we get to step 3, and all you're doing is really giving people a little bit of visibility. So again, this is kind of like stepping stone number 1, stepping stone number 2, stepping stone number 3, and they can see how they're kind of almost crossing the river in terms of getting to that other side, that other outcome that they're looking for. The other thing I always suggest is try and come up with a metaphor or an analogy that kind of brings this together as much as possible. So an example that I had earlier this year is I had a coach that helped out people that were just nearing retirement age, but weren't really ready to start, just living their retirement life where they didn't have to work or things like that. They were thinking about, like they're getting to the point where they're retirement age, but they weren't ready to kind of just drift off and go to the beach every day. So thinking about kind of their second act, and that's ultimately what we kind of called her, is kind of like that coach that helps people with their second act. She walked through this process of kind of that formula of like, how do you come up with, after you worked a long corporate career, like what is that, once I get to 65 or 70 or things like that, like what else can I do? And coming up with those ideas seemed almost overwhelming. So each of these steps, we talked about how it's almost like buying a house. And that's what she did in terms of, thinking about buying your house. we walk through each of the steps. Like step one, you obviously don't go out there and just start looking at every house possible. You really get a sense for like, okay, in the planning phase, like what do I actually want? And same thing with her, coaching. Like step one was really getting an inventory of like all those possible ideas of that second career that they could potentially pursue. And as we went along, obviously, taking tours of houses. And as she went through the steps, she got more and more specific. It got closer and closer to that bold promise. And for her audience, that gave them a lot of visibility on terms of like, how is it possible? Because again, if you just put out that bold promise and don't give people like kind of the pathway of how you're going to get them there, their belief is just not going to be enough for them to actually get on that next call with you or fill out an application or join your membership or join your course along the way. So it's not enough just to put out that bold promise. You have to kind of give them the stepping stones along the way and that formula along the way that makes it all possible. And again, using a metaphor or an analogy, and again, differentiated, giving each of these steps a unique name, giving your overall process a unique name is really helpful to building up curiosity, but also making each of your steps more memorable and differentiated from all the other things that your competition is talking about. So again, you might have a very similar process to, another coach that's out there, but if you can put some unique names to it, give people visibility on what's possible, then you're ultimately you're going to be able to make yourself less of a commodity and ultimately get to the point where people think about you with higher value, but also think about you less as a commodity. So it comes down to less about price and more about the return on investment that they're going to get, not only from a time perspective, but from a money perspective. So really think about, these bold promises. And then kind of, as we kind of dig a little bit deeper in terms of these specific sections, like, what are those old set of beliefs? What are those false beliefs that your audience has now? How can we knock them down? And letting them know, like, how has that resulted in the life that they have right now? And then kind of establishing a new set of beliefs. Again, if you've got success stories and can kind of walk people through each step of the process and show them those incremental results that go along with each step, that's really powerful and really building up to that bold promise. So that bold promise isn't just some claim that you have out there. Your audience can kind of almost systematically see like, okay, like this is built upon various different weeks worth of work or months worth of work, and they can start to see how it's all possible for them. And you kind of show them the pathway. It's not something that's completely blind, or you're not throwing out an empty promise, and you give them a lot more confidence to actually take that next step. So again, for a lot of my coaches, it's getting on, filling out an application and getting to the point where they get on some kind of sales call. Other people, it's joining a membership right away. So you're getting that conversion right away and building up that belief, and they're taking out their credit card right away. But really combining that bold promise with your unique formula, and then kind of breaking down that unique formula so there's full transparency, full visibility, so they can do that along the way. So that's kind of the second part of the webinar script. Again, as we go along further in the week, obviously this is one part of it. So we put out that bold promise in the introduction. We walk through that unique formula. This is a big part of building up that belief. And then we start to think about like all those other parts of the webinar. And this is where I'll start to build out things like the introduction and start to build out the things like the close and the offer and all those things along the way, which are super important. But this is kind of forms like the bedrock of your webinar. Again, if you can kind of put out a bold promise and really break it down for your audience in terms of how it's all possible, that's a big portion of, again, shifting them from where they are in terms of beliefs right now to that new set of beliefs that really lines up with putting them in the right frame of mind where they're ready to work with you right away. They're kind of pre-sold, and it's just a matter of you kind of qualifying them and figuring out the details along the way. So, let me know in the comments what kind of stuck out to you. Do you have a unique formula that you are connecting with your bold promise that you have out there? How would you think about those steps, especially as you work with your clients along the way? And what are some of those old set of beliefs that you know that your audience has? And what can you do to kind of shift them to new beliefs, whether it's success stories or your own personal stories, or just further incremental evidence that you have out there to give some proof behind that, so that you don't have any empty promises, not only in terms of that bold promise, but in each step of your promise along the way, you're really building up that way of thinking. So hit that like button if this was helpful in terms of the webinar script. Again, as we go along later in the week, we're going to get a little bit into the minutia in terms of the introduction, the close, how to transition into that next step of the process so that people are actually taking the action that you want to along the way. I'm kind of walking you through day by day what I think of as the top priorities. So again, it's all starting with that bold promise. Day 2, all about the unique formula and kind of breaking it down for your audience so they can see how that bold promise is possible and having the right set of beliefs to take that further action. Again, go to my opt-in right here, fullconfidenceads.com. Yeah, you can build up a great webinar, but if you don't have those interest and eyeballs going into it, you're obviously not going to have the results that you're looking for. So Full Confidence Ads is all about writing, Facebook ads that really catch your audience's attention and get you more and more people to that webinar. So with that, I will see you on a future live.